Coming up next, the Iowa State Democratic Party's Jefferson-Jackson Day Dinner, featuring all 6 Democratic presidential candidates.
Before I introduce one of our special guests, I want to express on behalf of all Iowa Democrats, and in fact all Democrats, appreciation to those of you who sat on the Health Legislation Committee, and especially to Dr. Steve Gleason down here who chaired that committee. It was very productive, and the work you did was heartwarming and welcome. I also want to thank the presidential candidates for playing a part in the elimination of our party's debt. To the number, they have been willing to help us raise money, and that, as you know, is critically important. So thank all of you. When Jimmy Carter was defeated, we lost more than the White House. For 6 long years, we were the minority party in the United States Senate. But thanks in large part to the efforts made by the Democratic National Committee, we moved back into control of the Senate after last year's election. And when we move back into the White House in 1989, it will be with the great help of our national party. As our national chair, Paul Kirk has led many efforts to strengthen the Democratic Party, strengthening the field organization across the country, improving the use of computers, and preparing our party for the next century. But most importantly, he has worked to broaden the base of our party without forgetting about the heart and soul of America's Democrats. Please join me in giving a warm, warm welcome to our Democratic National Chair, Paul Kirk.
Thank you very much for that warm Hawkeye welcome. I've been asked to make one administrative announcement. Louis Vandermolen would report to the first aid room for an emergency message. To all the Democrats here and distinguished Democrats at the head table, and to the next President of the United States, we're happy to be in Iowa. I know many of you folks are disappointed that this evening there's no straw poll. But I've got a surprise for you. I brought a little straw poll of my own to take right now. There's a fellow who lives a long ways from here, doesn't think much about this state. Every so often you see him on TV under those helicopter blades, pretending he doesn't hear the question. I want him to hear the answers to this straw poll. Are you proud to be a Democrat? Will the next President of the United States be a Democrat? And will he carry Iowa for the Democratic National Party in 1988? That's my kind of straw poll. I have the honor tonight to introduce the candidates of the Democratic Party for the presidency of the United States. But first, I want to remind you that 3 years ago, a Republican candidate, went before the American people and asked them to remember the greatest days of this republic. And in helping his audience remember, he mentioned certain names of certain American heroes who made those glory days possible. Can you remember those names? He didn't mention William McKinley. He didn't mention Herbert Hoover. He didn't mention Richard Nixon. The fact is, he never mentioned a single Republican. But he mentioned Franklin Roosevelt. And he mentioned Harry Truman. And he mentioned John F. Kennedy. And he mentioned Hubert Humphrey. And he mentioned Scoop Jackson. Everyone a national Democrat. Remember that, because that's what tonight is about. And that's what 1988 is about. It's about reclaiming our heritage as national Democrats and renewing our values as Americans. He invoked their names, all right, but he has yet to invoke their values. History tells us that the present belongs to the comfortable and the complacent. But it also tells us that the future belongs to the confident and the optimistic. If the Republicans want to challenge the Democrats for the future, let them first define and defend the present. My friends, think about it. The Republican America of the 1980s has been a fantasy land. A balanced budget by 1983 meant $220 billion in budget deficits by 1986. A competitive America meant $170 billion in trade deficits. And where a competitive trade policy meant export the farmer. Where the great American comeback meant taking this nation from the largest creditor nation to the largest debtor nation in 5 years. Where patriotism in the year of the Constitution meant disdain for the rule of law at home and abroad and contempt for government at every level. Where hopelessness in rural America and homelessness in urban America were greeted by callousness from the highest office in America. Where traditional American values meant selfishness was elevated to a Republican national policy, and truth was a problem to be solved simply by saying that wrong is right. That's the present. And tonight we have men who are prepared to seize the future, prepared to ask for change, for challenge and sacrifice for a better America. And I tell you, my friends, when this rally is over tonight, and when the caucuses are held, and the ballots are counted, this party has to leave more united, stronger, and better prepared than any time in modern political history, and we will. And we will win in 1988 because we've got better candidates. And I have the honor now to introduce the first of them to you. In a time when a Republican Party has a scorched earth policy toward government, I have the privilege of introducing to you a man who's given his life and public career to helping people through government as a state representative, a state senator, United States congressman, lieutenant governor, and now one of the finest public servants from the state of Illinois, the Honorable Paul Simon.
Thank you all very, very much. My good friend, Paul Kirk, my good friend Paul Kirk, Bonnie Campbell, my distinguished colleague and your great Senator Tom Harkin, my friends in the House, Neil Smith and Dave Nagel, and distinguished guests all. This is an exciting and important night. Exciting because you and I sense that the American people are ready for change, and that great change will begin here in Iowa. Important because everyone in this hall has the opportunity to help put America back on track and secure hope for future generations. 1 year, the American people will choose progress rather than status quo, humanity over greed, opportunity for all rather than for the few. They will choose a Democrat for the presidency of the United States. And I intend to be that Democrat. I thank you. You're going to get him, all right? I thank you. You're going to get me. I seek the presidency not because I want to live in a large White House or because I want to hear the band playing Hail to the Chief or want to hear the applause of the crowds. I seek the presidency because of the force for good that office can become. I seek the presidency because I know we can build a better tomorrow for this nation and for our world and I understand how to get there. I seek the presidency because this nation needs to dream once again, act once again, believe once again, care once again. Isn't it time for us as a party and as a country to believe once again? Isn't it time for our party and our country to believe once again that our society can better the lives of the less fortunate rather than abandon them to a life without hope, a world without dreams? Isn't it time to believe once again that economic opportunity can be here for all Americans, not just the wealthy and powerful, but for a steel worker in Alabama, a nurse in Wyoming, and a farmer in Iowa? Yes, my friends, the time for change has arrived. It is time for the President of the United States to fill leadership posts with champions of the needy rather than the cronies of the greedy. It is time once again that Washington and Wall Street follow the example of Main Street. Don't spend money you don't have. It is time once again to start living up to our obligation to the next generation, to give them more than a huge debt. I want to stop borrowing from our children. I want to give them an opportunity. I want to give them an opportunity for a decent job, a home of their own, a quality education for their children, and a secure retirement. It is time once again for American products and American workers to stand tall and not fall victim to unfair foreign competition or the failure of our government to act. Time to see once again that the men and women who build our buildings and sweat on assembly lines and teach our children and plow our fields receive real recognition and real reward. It is time to do better for our parents and grandparents. Time to ensure that they receive quality, long-term health care. It is time to make education a national priority. To use our resources to provide a sound investment in our children rather than endless and purposeless purchasing of useless and unused weapons. It is time to assure farm families who produce our food that while they must gamble with the weather, they should not receive the cold shoulder from an indifferent government. It is time to take the necessary steps to assure that future generations inherit unpoisoned soil and water and air. It is time for the President of the United States to fight for a leaner, tougher, more effective, but less expensive defense program. Time for the President to seize and create opportunities to move away from the arms race, to promote understanding rather than belligerency, to demand that once again the ideals of human rights play a central part in our foreign policy, and nowhere Nowhere is that more important than in South Africa, where we must stand firm against the cruel injustice of apartheid. It is time to have a president who preserves and defends the Constitution by following it all the way, not looking for ways to get around it. It is time to have a president who is proud of his own political affiliations, but recognizes the need for a bipartisan foreign policy. It is time to have leadership that appeals to the noble rather than the greed in us. I recall when John F. Kennedy got on national television and told us that he was sending federal troops so that James Meredith could be admitted to the University of Mississippi, and explained why he was doing it. He appealed to the best in all of us, North and South, East and West. And I remember how proud I was to be an American that night. I want leadership that recognizes our need for a sense of community, that calls us to leave this nation better than we found it, that appeals to the best in each of us. And it is time, my friends, for our Democratic Party to rise up in full voice and stand tall once more for our basic principles. It is time to say once again that we're proud of the traditions of our party. The tradition of fighting for decent jobs for all Americans, long-term care for seniors, the tradition of leveling with the American people and having pay-as-you-go government, the concern for quality education for everyone, the tradition of standing up for human rights. These are the traditions I embrace, not just with this speech, but with my whole heart. Those who tell us to abandon these traditions are telling us to abandon our soul and our chance of winning. I'm pleased there is a Republican Party, but one Republican Party is enough. You can't win an election by standing for nothing. Harry Truman said it best. Give the American people a choice between a Republican and a Republican, and they'll choose the Republican every time. I intend to make sure that next November the American people can choose between a real Republican and a real make-no-apologies Democrat. I thank you. We are here to honor two Democratic heroes who gave birth to the traditions that have made our nation great. Our Republican friends convene in halls such as this to honor a great president from my home state of Illinois. The name of Abraham Lincoln is with them. The spirit of Lincoln is with us. Lincoln established the tradition that a man's right to freedom should not be based on the color of his skin. This administration has turned its back on the progress that so many have marched for and fought for and died for in ensuring basic civil rights for minorities and women in America. 3 months from now, Iowans begin the national process of selecting our next president. You possess the power to move this nation in a new direction. If you give me the opportunity, I will be proud to accept this challenge of leading this nation forward, but I need your help to get there. If you decide here in Iowa that it's time for us to believe once again and dream once again and act once again and lead once again, I welcome your support. You and I are on this planet but a short time. Let us seize this opportunity and this time to build a better tomorrow so that generations to come will look back upon us and say, these were people of uncommon compassion and vision and courage. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Senator Simon. Our next distinguished Democrat is a man who set such a high standard for excellence as Democratic governor of Arizona that they're trying to get a recall petition to get rid of his successor. That's how well Bruce Babbitt did. He was a fighting attorney general, fighting for the rights of children as governor, and as a voice of this Democratic Party. He's a no-nonsense executive, a pragmatic problem solver, a son of the West, former chairman of the Democratic Governors Association, chosen by his own peers to lead that body. Let's have a Hawkeye welcome for Governor Bruce Babbitt of Arizona.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good evening. Hattie and I are proud to be in Iowa, and we want to acknowledge all of you, the many, many Iowans who across the past year have extended the hand of friendship, who have welcomed us into your living rooms, who have introduced us to this extraordinary geography, culture, and people called Iowa. I want to acknowledge especially the leaders of our Iowa campaign, Tom Miller and Linda, Dale and Janine Cochran. Now, I must tell you in all candor, it's been an interesting day. Al Gore and I have been spending a lot of time explaining what we were doing in college. And I must tell you that we have finally discovered a policy that we agree on. It's called the statute of limitations. Did any of you see the Republican debate last week? Well, you didn't miss very much. Haig called Bush a wimp, and Bush called DuPont Pierre. Robertson said he'd outlaw abortion so we'd have more taxpayers. And DuPont told us he wants your kids to go down to the Department of Motor Vehicles to urinate in a Dixie cup. Now, you know, I wish I'd been given that kind of material on Saturday Night Live. But you do have to kind of feel sorry for George Bush. He's got to stand up next to Ronald Reagan and say, things are better now than they've ever been, and I'm the only guy who can get us out of this mess. But I don't think he's going to make it. He announced his candidacy for president of the United States by saying that there was nothing wrong with the economy that couldn't be cured by cutting the capital gains tax for stockbrokers. What happened? Then, not to be outdone, Jack Kemp promptly repeated his call for the gold standard. You know, it all makes me think we have a pretty good chance in 1988. And I can't resist a word about my successor, Evan Mecham, that great Now, wait a minute. You know, Evan Mecham succeeding Bruce Babbitt is conclusive proof that Darwin was wrong. Well, the good news from Arizona is that more people have now signed petitions to recall Ev Mecham than voted for him last year. But the bad news is this. There's a rumor tonight that Ronald Reagan is going to appoint him to the Supreme Court. Now, I've discovered one thing that Evan Mecham and your governor have in common. Now, I know it's not polite to come to Iowa and make light of your governor, but I'm going to do it anyway. Can I do it anyway? Evan Mecham and your governor do have one thing in common. They both take an hour and a half to watch 60 Minutes. And you know, the Supreme Court isn't Reagan's only problem. The Iran-Contra report is finally out now, and it's disappointing because I really think if they'd probed a little harder and dug a little deeper, at last they would have established a link between Ronald Reagan and the presidency. Well, all right, that's almost enough, but I think you will be interested in some new findings that consistently show that the voters in this race are now ready to support a candidate who is not currently in the race, and that could mean Mario Cuomo, or Bill Bradley, or me. Well, look, there's been, and Lord knows we have good reason to do a lot of Reagan bashing tonight. But I'd like to use my few minutes to talk honestly and directly and positively about our country, about America. Ronald Reagan and the Republicans have now piled up the largest deficits in our entire history. It wasn't an accident. We have to understand that they've done it deliberately, for a reason, because they see those deficits as a way to destroy government. They're using that deficit as an axe to chop away at every bit of social progress that we've achieved in the last half century. They want to cut and eliminate programs that offer security to our parents, medicine to our children, opportunity for America's farmers, training for America's workers, care for infants and the homeless. They're using those deficits to repeal the achievements of the New Deal, to erase the dreams of the new frontier, to cancel the gains of the Great Society. We've got news for them tonight. We won't, we can't, we'll never surrender those victories that we've won. We're Democrats. We believe that government can make a difference, and we believe that we have a moral obligation to help people who need help. That's what I marched for in the streets of Selma, Alabama. That's what I worked for in the war on poverty. That's why nearly 8,000 Iowans are here tonight, and that's why I'm running for president. As Democrats, we have two choices. We can stand by in silence while the Republicans use the deficits to destroy our legacy, or we can act. If we really care about the progressive agenda, we have the obligation to be honest about that deficit. If we won't say what it is we will defend, where we will cut, who we will tax, and how we'll pay, we'll never be able to look America in the eye and explain why we're Democrats. So I've made my choice in this campaign. No more flim-flam on the budget. No more make-believe world of easy answers. No more conspiracy of silence. I'm going to say it straight. We've got to raise taxes and cut spending. We've got to apply a needs test to the budget so that spending cuts reflect our real moral priorities. We've got to consider a consumption tax that's progressive to pay for the programs that we need. We've got to cut spending and raise taxes together so that America knows that we really mean business when we say that we know how to govern. I'm staking my campaign on the simple wager that truth-telling will carry you a long, long way. Now, people say to me, they say, Bruce, but we can't win by telling the truth. Remember Mondale. We can only win by keeping our mouths shut and our fingers crossed. I say to them, no, you're wrong. Because honesty is good policy, and good policy makes good politics, and good politics means victory. And the time for truth is now. It's not after the votes are cast. The time for leadership is now, not after the election. And I say, with respect but urgency, to those with me on this platform, we do no honor to moral purpose when we use a gimmick like Gramm-Rudman to make our hard choices by default. And Al, we can do better. We do no service to candor when we say that there's a phantom $110 billion out there to be collected by 10,000 more IRS agents. Mike, we can do better. We can't call ourselves progressives when we plug an import fee that sends 55 cents of every dollar directly to oil companies. Dick, we can do better. We do nothing for the credibility of Democrats when we say that there are enough savings in a $300 billion defense budget to close a $200 billion budget deficit. Jesse, we can do better. And we suspend reality when we say we'll save money by spending $10,000 in wages for a public works job that will only produce $1,000 in taxes, and then turn right around and endorse the Reagan balanced budget. Paul, we can do better. We can do better. We will do better because we're Democrats. We can't stoop to half-truths and gimmicks and tricks, because if we do, the Republicans will win, because they do it better. That's my wager. That's my wager. I'm optimistic enough to believe that America will respond to a dose of leadership and honesty. Think about it for a minute. If you look around this world, you'll see an American success story. American values are winning. American economics are in the ascendancy. Japan is an American success story. We wrote it. Europe is a marvel of economic reconstruction. We built it. Marxism is a dying philosophy. We outproduced them. The world is alive with change. We can lead it. Because around the world, people are yearning for democracy and thirsting for American leadership. Here at home, they're looking for honesty and courage and expecting it. That's what the Democratic Party is about. That's what my campaign is about. And that's why we will elect a Democrat in 1988. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bruce Babbitt. The Iowans know hospitality, that's for sure. Moving right along, our next distinguished speaker is a fellow from Show Me State. Throughout his distinguished public career, he's lived up to that motto. He knows the Congress, and the Congress knows him. And they elected him as leader of the Democratic House Caucus. He served with distinction on the all-important House Ways and Means Committee. He has served on the Budget Committee. He has been one who receives the salute of his peers, and it is well deserved. He is here in Iowa tonight to add his clear voice to the dialogue and shaping the future of this country, and he deserves as well your round of applause, Congressman Dick Gephardt of Missouri.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. That's good. Thank you. Bonnie Campbell, Iowa public officials and leaders, my name is Dick Gephardt, and I want to be your next President of the United States. First, for the countless hours of work they have already spent on my campaign, I want to thank my wife, Jane, and my mother, Lorene. And I want to thank all the Iowa Democrats and the leaders of this party, because this party in Iowa is one of the best state parties that exists in the United States, and I thank you for your help. There's one other person I want to recognize tonight. It's a person who campaigned throughout this state and who helped defeat Judge Bork, and who's not with us tonight but should be recognized. That's Senator Joe Biden of Delaware. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most important election of our lifetime, because what's at stake here is more than just an election. We can't afford 8 more years of indifference and retreat, of shattered hope and lost opportunity. The period of the next presidency will be decisive, not only for world events, but for millions of Americans. So many people Jane and I have met all over the country. What's at stake here are the lives and the hopes and the dreams of millions of Americans. Real people. I'm sick of the charts and the graphs and the dry statistics the Republicans use to tell us that we've never had it so good. The Democratic Party says we can do better. We've met thousands of wonderful people, people who are fighting for their share of the American dream. We met a young woman, a college student here in Iowa. She told us that she had a 3.6 grade point average, and her parents made $14,000 a year, but she had to drop out of school when her student loan was cut off. She's been left behind by the status quo, and it's for her sake that we speak and stand for change, so that never again will the passport to an education be a checkbook again in this country.
At this point in our coverage, we experienced technical problems. We continue Representative Gephardt's remarks several minutes later.
I spend a lot of my time trying to get things done, and I know it requires strength and skill and patience. That's how we passed tax reform, when everybody said the lobbies wouldn't let us close the loopholes. That's how I rounded up the votes in 1983 to cut off aid to the Contras. I went to the members of Congress and told them that we needed them. I talked to them, and that's how we won. Ronald Reagan doesn't even know the names of the members of his cabinet, much less the members of Congress. Now we need a president who knows the Congress and really knows how to move it. Getting things done means finding common ground. It requires a refusal to accept the choices of the status quo. And sometimes it takes another refusal, a refusal to tell people only what they want to hear instead of what they need to know. I've met people here in Iowa who say that we need to move forward on arms control, that we need deep cuts in the number of nuclear weapons that are pointed at the heart of human life. And they're right. But I've also met people south and north who say that we need a strong and stable military to provide for the common defense. And they're right too. The status quo has been giving us a false choice. We don't have to choose between sufficient arms and arms control. We have to have both. That's why I've spelled out a plan for a strong and sane defense policy, including the midget man and the stealth, but doing away with the destabilizing MX and the rush to Star Wars deployment. We must always remember what John Kennedy never forgot, that the American symbol is neither the hawk nor the dove. It's the eagle, with an olive branch in one talon and arrows in the other, but with its face always turned toward the olive branch of peace. Don't you think it's time we had a president who is strong enough to seek peace? I've met factory workers in Pennsylvania who say that we need to fight unfair trade practices that threaten their jobs, and they're right. And I've met farmers in Taylor County who say that we need to avoid protectionism that could threaten their markets, and they're right too. All the status quo offers is another false choice. Hurt workers are hurt farmers. I say we have to help both, and that's why I've spelled out my trade policy, which will open markets and not close them. It's time It is time to end the present policy of standing there and doing nothing while the industrial and agricultural heart is being torn out of our economy. Everywhere I go, I hear people say that we have to lower the deficit and cut back on farm subsidies. And I've heard people in the Midwest say they can't afford to keep their farm afloat. The status quo sets those who produce against those who consume. We have to stake out a common ground so that we can bring them together. That's why I've spelled out my farm policy. The Harkin-Gephardt Save the Family Farm Act, which let Isn't it time that the farmers who feed the world make enough money to feed their families? These are the issues on which I disagree with some of the other candidates. They say we don't have to be this tough or this specific or this far-reaching, but I believe we can't afford to settle for themes or tinkering. We need answers. We need change. This is what this race is really all about. Not posturing or positioning or regional strategies, but proposing real solutions to real problems. That's the history of our party. A party of progress that brings change every day and in every decade. As Democrats, we must resist the temptation to play it safe, to temporize, or to run for office by running from fundamental issues. We have to stand up for a fuller measure of liberty because the daughters of the women who were denied equal pay must not be denied an equal rights amendment. We have to have the courage to stand up for civil rights because it's time we return simple justice to the Justice Department. We need to stand up for the true meaning of law and order because we need an attorney general who appears before grand juries as a prosecutor, not as a defendant. We have to stand up for our older Americans because we need to put that Republican plan to cut Social Security right where it belongs, on the scrap heap of the Reagan years. And we have to stand up for the poor, the dispossessed, the disenfranchised, because it's in how we treat the least of us that history will judge the rest of us. We have to stand up. We have to stand up for education because star schools will do much more for our national security than Star Wars. And we have to stand up for American jobs because I'd rather reflag American industries and farms than reflag Kuwaiti tankers. And we have to stand up for peace, not war, because the sons of the men who fought in the jungles of Vietnam must not be sent to fight and die in the jungles of Central America. All of us want to win in 1988, but we have to remember something. If we trade our soul for a few votes, we're going to lose more than an election. We must remember who we are and where we came from and how we got to be on this stage tonight. We must never forget that the Democratic Party has been the instrument of social change that allowed the son of a milk truck driver, the son of a Greek immigrant, the son of a Methodist preacher, and someone who's had to overcome the worst sort of prejudice and poverty to aspire to be the president of these United States. It's this party that's allowed us to sit on this stage, Al, with the son of a United States Senator. And that's why the rest of us are so reluctant to turn the Democratic Party into the Republican Party. Their candidates read like a roster of favorite Republican constituencies. They include a general and a millionaire and 2 sons of senators. We're here because Democrats in earlier days extended the lifeline of economic opportunity to each of us and to millions of others. They extended that lifeline into the sweatshops, the Dust Bowl, and the segregated neighborhoods. There have always been those who say that our party cares too much, that it's too compassionate, that it isn't smart politics to be committed and concerned. If we echo such voices now, we betray our heritage as individuals and as a party. Because somewhere tonight, in a barrio or an urban ghetto or on a small farm, there's a future president growing up, if only he or she has the chance. Today, the children of truck drivers are in the mill villages of the Carolinas. The children of immigrants are in our inner cities. The talent, the hope, and the yearnings of the American future are in places where people are depending on us. Our party has been the steward of the American conscience. And we have to ask ourselves, what is our obligation now? Is it to take up the unfinished business of the American dream? You bet it is. And so the party of Franklin Roosevelt must feed the hungry and house the homeless. The party of Lyndon Johnson must renew the war on poverty and win it. And the party of Jimmy Carter must stand up for human rights here and around the world. For in the end, we must again live up to the words spoken by his brother of a man who in his time spurned the call of expediency and was the voice of the American conscience, Robert Kennedy. We must be the party that sees wrong and tries to right it, sees suffering and tries to heal it, sees war and tries to stop it. And if we do that, then someday his dream will truly come to pass for all the world. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you all very much. Thank you all very much. Thank you. It's almost time to begin those caucuses. Thank you all very much. We have two more great Democrats to hear from. Three more. We want to get everybody home before those caucuses in February now. Thank you all very much. We're only halfway home, so if we could ask for your attention. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you all very much. It's my pleasure now as we introducing the next guest. When you see the words that usually follow his name, civil rights activists, think about what that means. It means a man who reminds us every day of his active life that diversity is the greatest strength America has, and that equal opportunity is always its noblest goal. He's a man who makes things happen. He's brought poetry and passion to politics, eloquence and energy to the democratic dialogue, and a force to the Democratic Party. And welcome, Jesse Jackson.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Let me express my thanks and delight for your kind and generous expressions of support. Let me express my thanks to our distinguished Chairman Paul Kirk. Please give him a round of applause. Thank you. To the distinguished officials from the state of Iowa, for your kindness and generosity and support and hospitality, let me express my thanks to you. For the people of Greenfield who've been so good to us, who've housed us, to our illustrious Chairman Jay Howe, Jay Stan, wherever you are, Jay Howe, Evelyn Davis, Willard Olson, John Norris. Please give our staff a great hand, will you please? I want to recognize Caroline Cool and John Cool, who are the deaf interpreters and for the disabled. Will you give them a hand, please, shall you? Tonight, this is a momentous occasion as we gather to put forth a message, to offer bold leadership to our party and to our nation. In this struggle for leadership and direction, there'll be days of brilliant sunshine and days of clouds, days of pain, and yet in the real sense, suffering breeds character, and character breeds faith. In the end, faith will not disappoint. As a party, we've had our share of troubles, but we do not stand alone. We had this crisis early on of plagiarism, but Bush has the opposite problem. He cannot quote himself. We see today that President Reagan was awakened and told to appoint someone to the high court, and he appointed Ginsburg. He would be the youngest and highest justice if he had made the grade. The fact is, a lot of headlines have been written about Mr. Reagan's failures to support an adequate Supreme Court justice. Tonight, we can survive the Supreme Court vacancy. We cannot survive the vacancy in the White House. We need new leadership. Tonight, there is a challenge for those of us who are running, a greater challenge for our party, even greater for the nation. I want to win in '88. Democrats must win in '88. Tonight, as I come to this tremendous occasion, I have few signs, less money, just a rich message, trying to be the conscience and candidate for our party. We have this challenge, defeat Reagan's twin lies, that we have weak military and cannot afford economic justice. The fact is, we must afford economic justice. Our military is strong. Our commander-in-chief is weak. We need new leadership. On October 19th, the stock market crashed. Before the stock market crashed, 650,000 family farmers crashed. Energy workers crashed. Textile workers crashed. Paper workers crashed. Steel and auto workers crashed. Women, infants, and children crashed. AFDC crashed. Daycare and Head Start programs crashed. Children who needed prenatal care or daycare all crashed. 600,000 children tried to commit suicide. Nearly 6,000 succeeded. My friends, Reagan's shining city on the hill is a city without a light. Tonight we need new leadership from that White House. We need a moral tone. We need clear direction from the White House tonight. We must talk, straight talk to you tonight. A trade deficit, $143 billion is real. A budget deficit, $221 billion is real. Mr. Reagan offered $750 billion in tax cuts to the rich and businesses. He doubled the military budget in peacetime on the $1.5 trillion spending binge. What must we do? How can we win? In 1984, Mr. Reagan won by a landslide. Many Democrats were intimidated. They heard the sounds of victory, but they did not count the cost. They turned toward balanced budgets. They turned toward Graham-Rudman-Hollins. They turned toward Reaganomics. I turned toward registration. That's why there's a Senate majority Democrat today, because I turned toward where the people were. I turned toward registration. Tonight, we do not have a Democratic majority Senate because of Graham-Rudman-Hollins. We do not have Joe Biden rather than Strom Thurmond because of balanced budget. Because we reached out for the locked out and lifted the forgotten. We lifted the boats stuck at the bottom. A key to winning is that we turn to each other and not on each other and expand the party, make room for new people. We are not the party of the mainstream. We're the party of the broad river where everybody can fit. Everybody must have a chance to be in this democracy. We cannot win with the mainstream. Only a small boat can get in that mainstream. We're the part of the masses. We've always reached out. That's a measure of our character. When I look at those who struggle to come here tonight, riding their wheelchairs, that should be a message to us. Tonight, Tom Harkin talked about people rising up, being inspired because of President Franklin D. Roosevelt. And I think about those in wheelchairs who denied access to transportation, access to a job, access to a chance to share, to build, to make a contribution. Just this night, I would rather have Roosevelt in a wheelchair than Reagan on a horse. Let's give everybody a chance. How do we win? We win because we expand the Democratic Party. How do we win? We build coalition at the issues that affect the lives of our families. Our party must be the party to stop drugs from coming into America and stop jobs from going out. Let's reverse that proposition. Send drugs out and let jobs come in and stabilize the American family. Leadership so often must stand alone. Great leadership does not follow opinion polls. In Moe's opinion, April 25th, There was a great march in Washington. 200,000 peace activists gathered, saying no intervention in Central America, free South Africa. I stood there alone. How often is it that those running for the White House will miss the chance to stand before 200,000 American citizens unless they're advised that don't get too close to peace activists. It may not look presidential. September 15th, I stood with Teamsters in Cincinnati, where they gathered 7,000 strong, threatened with trusteeship, the taking over of their union. That was not right. It was not fair. I stood with those truck drivers. Meese argued that because of 100 indictments in 7 years, they should be pulled in the trusteeship. Well, there have been 592 Reagan appointees indicted in 7 years. Maybe the Reagan administration should be in trusteeship. That's a threat to us all. October the 11th, the 600,000 gay and lesbian people gathered in Washington, D.C. I stood with them because they're human beings. They're American citizens. They deserve due process. They're suffering. I stood there and watched 2,000 people dying before my eyes, in their wheelchairs, trembling, freezing, sweating, in blankets, dying with AIDS. And yet, some voices said, don't get close to them. They don't fit. It will not look presidential. I would advise those of you who have some pseudo-morality about helping those who are trapped by AIDS. The last night on earth of Jesus the Christ, he stayed with Simon the leper, who was quarantined and rejected. Our part as greatness is in our character. Reach out for AIDS victims. Reach out for women, infants, and children. Reach out for those who are disabled. Reach out for the locked out. That's our party. That's our power. That's our character. We're often asked, and Babbitt raises the most often, Democrats can dream. We must pay for our dreams. We need not be apologetic about the fact that we believe in a fair tax structure. We can't balance our budget off the backs of those on unemployment compensation, or welfare, or unemployed. There must be a fair tax structure, and their state tax for the wealthy will give us $6 billion. The wealthy must pay their share. Those making $200,000 a year or above can remain at the 38% tax bracket. That's $22 billion. They can pay their share. Corporations, if they pay at the 1980 level, that's another $20 billion. They can pay their share. It's not right for General Electric to make $6 billion between 1981 and 83 and pay no taxes, get $182 million tax rebate, and people on unemployment compensation pay taxes. That is un-American. It is unfair. It must change. I'll tell you where taxes must be cut. I'll tell you where the big lobbyists must share the burden of keeping the American dream alive. It's good to one day celebrate a Reagan-Gorbachev meeting in Washington about arms control, to move toward arms reduction, but then the next day, why compound our crisis with 2 additional aircraft task forces, $40 billion more dollars? We do not need them and cannot afford them. We do not need more first-strike nuclear weapons. We do not need them and cannot afford them. We cannot afford Star Wars at $500 billion. We do not need them and cannot afford them. Our party must wipe out poverty. That must be our promise to the American people. Build adequate housing. Make health care available based upon need and not just based upon wealth. Build daycare centers. Better we invest in education and teachers in September than jails and penitentiaries and welfare in June and July. Let's make the hard choices and the right decisions. Tonight, my friends, nothing threatens us more than overdependence on foreign energy and foreign capital. When a nation the size of Kuwait, fewer than 2 million people, can say to us, flag our ships, and we'll get 9 ships from the Soviet Union. They may get the oil. They may patrol the Persian Gulf. When we are over-dependent on foreign energy and foreign capital, our military is vulnerable. Dispel the Reagan myth and lie. Our military is weak. Our military is not weak. Our leadership is weak. Our boys were killed in Lebanon. They never had a chance. Strong military, weak leadership. In the Persian Gulf tonight, our boys are being looked at down the sights of Dons made in America, sold to Ayatollah illegally and immorally. Strong military, weak leadership. We need leadership. If tonight, in Iowa, you had a refrigerator full of food and it was locked, and you were threatened with starvation, you in your house fighting over a refrigerator full of food across the river, held by hostile forces who didn't like each other and didn't like you, that would be absurd. Why would you starve with your own refrigerator full of food and capped? Why are we so over-dependent on foreign energy when right here in Canada and North America and Mexico and Venezuela and Colombia and Ecuador in our own hemisphere, we have sufficient coal reserves and oil reserves and cogeneration and conservation, just as Monroe had a military doctrine for this hemisphere. I have an energy and economic doctrine for our hemisphere. Let's become energy sufficient. Let's compete with OPEC. Let's free ourselves of being hostages to foreign oil. Our greatness will be diminished unless we do. My leadership comes from the point of challenge. Where is leadership? Leadership is the April 25th Peace March. Leadership is the Teamsters in September. Leadership is with gay and lesbians October the 11th. Leadership is challenging Gorbachev to stop deploying missiles with the Free Soviet Jewry. Leadership is at the point of crisis. I've been with family farmers at your farm foreclosures, those who fed America and fed the world deserve a bailout, not just a handout. If we can bail out Chrysler and New York and Europe and Japan, we can bail out the family farmer. That's a matter of priorities. Leadership is at the plant gate that closed on workers without notice. Leadership is at the schoolyard where youth with a good mind couldn't get a scholarship, couldn't make a loan, and teachers could not get paid. Leadership is at the shipyard where goods made by slave labor undercut organized labor. Leadership is at a hospital where somebody is dying because they can't get a green or yellow card to go upstairs to a bed that's empty, waiting for the rich or those insured to get sick. Leadership is going to Syria, bringing Lieutenant Robert Goodman back home, and not leaving a cake or a Bible with Assad. Leadership, on Thanksgiving Day, I'm going to the Persian Gulf. I'm going to see our troops, our boys and our girls. There may be division in our country over Reagan's Gulf policy. Sending a cake to Ayatollah, which she does not eat, was bad policy. A Bible which she does not read was bad policy. Setting arms to Ayatollah illegally was bad policy. There may be debate over Reagan's policy in the Persian Gulf. There must be no debate over support for our troops who are there. They are boys, they are girls. We must protect them. They need a leader that can bring them home with peace and honor. We need leadership at the point of challenge. January 21st, 1989, with your support and God can make this a more perfect union. First step, Atlanta, Georgia. Second step, White House. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
As far as the demonstration.
Thank you all
I'll try to outdo Gephardt.
very much. Thank you, Reverend Jackson. It is my honor now to present another Democrat who is honored by his peers, Democratic governors across the country. Also saw in our next speaker the leadership to chair the Democratic Governors Association. He is a man who combines the toughness to govern with the compassion to care. And as chief executive of his state, has brought an economy that unites people, not divides it. He is one who is a strong chief executive, a great Democrat, and deserves the welcome of Hawkeyes that can be heard back in the Commonwealth. Let's hear it for Governor Michael Dukakis.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, please, guys. Thank you. Press. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you. Thanks, kids. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. You've got them. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the hour is late. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's 11 o'clock. The hour is late. And Senator Gore still has to speak. So I thank you all for your enthusiasm, and I'll try to be the first candidate up here to stay within the 10 minutes that you gave us and see if we can keep this down. Thank you all very much. Why do I always have to come after Jesse? That's what I want to know this evening. Let me begin, as everyone has this evening, by thanking Bonnie and John and one of the two best state Democratic parties in the country, the other being Massachusetts, needless to say. And let me begin by thanking you for sending Tom Harkin to the United States Senate. We're very grateful to you. And Neil and Dave and these fine constitutional officers and legislators. This is a wonderful state, and Kitty and I and our kids have had a wonderful experience with all of you, and we thank you for that, in cities and towns and rural counties all across Iowa. It's also a special privilege to be here with our party chairman, another son of Massachusetts, an old friend, and to thank him for what he has done to unify the Democratic Party over the past 3 years. And Paul, we're very grateful to you for what you've done and appreciate that. And thanks to these past 7 months, I've gotten to know many of you and many of your communities. I know a lot more about corn and soybeans and hogs than I ever did before, and appreciate those very special values which Iowa stands for. It's also been a lot of fun, and we've had some surprises. A couple of months ago, much to my surprise, Playgirl magazine decided that the governor of Massachusetts was one of the 10 sexiest men in America. And nothing I asked for, nothing I campaigned for, nothing I sought. And I don't have to tell you that, particularly in my capital city, it was quite a piece of news. They called my wife, who was campaigning for me on the West Coast, and asked her how she felt about it. She said she knew it all along. Now there's devotion and dedication. I called my 18-year-old daughter, who was working for us in our Boston headquarters, and told her that her father had just been named one of the 10 sexiest men in America, and she began laughing uncontrollably for 5 minutes. But privately, I don't have to tell you, I felt pretty good about it. I mean, after all, how many men are named by Playgirl magazine as one of the 10 sexiest men in America? And I was feeling kind of puffed up about it for a couple of days, and one of my friends took me aside quietly, and he said, "Mike, they gave it to George Bush 2 years ago." You know, Dick talked about our backgrounds and who we are in this extraordinary political system of ours that makes it possible for all of us to be here tonight and to be serious candidates for the presidency. My parents came to this country 75 years ago as immigrants, seeking opportunity and seeking the American dream, and they found it for themselves and for their sons. My dad came here as a 15-year-old immigrant lad, had very little money, couldn't speak the language, and became a doctor. My mother was the first Greek young woman ever to go beyond high school in the history of the city of Haverhill, Massachusetts, and she became a school teacher. My dad passed away in 1979. My mother is 84. And today in Iowa, in Colorado, and Minnesota, and Florida, is campaigning for her son for the presidency of the United States. There's only one nation on the face of the earth where that could happen, and it's the United States of America. So I'm a product of the American dream, and I believe in that dream. And I want to make it come true for every single citizen in this country, no matter who they are or where they come from or what the color of their skin. Now, the American dream is not a particularly complicated idea. It's the dream of a good job at good wages, of opportunity for our farmers, of good schools for our kids and good skills for our workers, of decent and affordable health care, of good housing, of a healthy and wholesome environment. That's what the American dream is all about. And the next president of the United States had better be somebody who understands that dream and can make it happen. My friends, we're living under a fiscal house of cards. We know that now, particularly after what's happened this past 3 weeks. You can't live on a credit card for 7 years because the bill collector one day comes to the door and starts knocking, and that's what happened 3 weeks ago in this country. And the next president of the United States had better be somebody who understands how you make those tough decisions and how you go to work on the economic growth and future of this country and how you build a strong and vibrant America. And that means not a two-nation economy, not some places that are doing well and other places that are doing poorly, but economic opportunity and economic growth and a strong and growing economy in every part of this country, in Iowa, in northern Minnesota, in southern Texas, in those mining towns in Wyoming, in those mill and industrial towns in western Pennsylvania and Ohio. That's what the American dream is all about. That's what this country is all about. And that's what Mike Dukakis is all about, and that's why I'm running for the presidency. But the next president of the United States, is also going to have another extraordinary challenge and an extraordinary opportunity. And it's the challenge of international leadership. I want this country to be strong, and I want us to be tough, and I want us to be involved. But I want us to be strong and tough and involved for the right reasons and the right goals and the right values. My friends, we don't need a shooting war in Nicaragua. We need a war against poverty and injustice and exploitation all over Central and Latin America. We need a partnership for progress with our democratic allies in Central and Latin America. We need to get behind a courageous young president of Costa Rica that has given us the kind of leadership that our president has been unable to give us, because the goals of the Arias Plan are our goals and its values are our values. And if we will get behind that plan and get behind the peace process in Central America, and get behind democratic and human rights in Central America, and get behind economic and social reconstruction in Central America, we can build that partnership for progress and that partnership for peace and that partnership for economic justice with our friends. That's what the United States is all about. That's what our values are all about. That's what we should stand for. My friends, we have the best opportunity for meaningful arms control and arms reduction we've had in our lifetime. Because change is sweeping this world, change in the Soviet Union, change in China, change in Central and Latin America, change in the Philippines, change all over the world. And it's change that is moving in our direction. And I hope the President will negotiate and sign that INF agreement, because it's very important. And I hope, Tom, that you and your colleagues will ratify it. But I think it's interesting that only one of the 6 Republican candidates for the presidency of the United States are supporting the president on that agreement. All of the Democratic candidates are, and only one of 6 Republican candidates support the president. But my friends, if we can get that agreement signed and if the Senate will ratify it, that could set the stage for dramatic changes in the way this world operates, in our opportunity to build a more stable and a more peaceful world. It will set the stage for the next president of the United States to negotiate deep cuts in strategic weapons and a comprehensive 10-strand treaty and reductions in conventional forces as well, the kinds of things that so many of you have been working on for so long. So that's an extraordinary challenge, providing the next president understands the forces of change and can help to shape them for a more peaceful and a more stable world. Ladies and gentlemen, next year, one of us who has spoken to you tonight will be at this dinner as the President-elect of the United States of America. And let me tell you, we're going to have a party right here in Des Moines, Iowa. Right here in Des Moines, Iowa. One of us will have the extraordinary opportunity that only a president has to bring this nation together, to build an economic future that creates good jobs and economic opportunity for every single citizen in this land, and to help build a more peaceful world. I hope that with your help, I can be that president. A president who respects the Constitution, a president who respects the Congress, a president who can bring out the greatness that is America. I look forward to working with you. I look forward to campaigning with you. and I look forward to winning with you. Thank you all very much, and thank you for being so patient. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Maybe the folks at the front could wait till after we're through till we get the autographs so we can hear from our next distinguished speaker. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, after you have heard from our next speaker, I think that you'll agree with me that the Democratic Party of 1987 and 1988 not only will have fielded candidates far superior to the Republican Party of this year, but better than any group of candidates that any political party has put forth for the leadership of this country in recent years. And the next gentleman that I'm about to introduce is one of those. He is a man from the volunteer state who volunteered for his country in Vietnam, 4 terms in the House of Representatives, and now serves with distinction in the majority of the Senate of the United States. A clear view of the future, a man of maturity and knowledge on the most complex issues of our times, from arms control to the future of science and what it can do for human beings. A great Democrat in a family of great Democrats, the United States Senator from the state of Tennessee, welcome Al Gore.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate that warm welcome. And Chairman Paul Kirk, I appreciate your generous introduction. And Chairperson Bonnie Campbell, distinguished guests who are here, forgive me for not singling everyone out, but I would like to mention 3 people with whom I serve in Washington. The dean of your delegation, with whom I've worked for a long time and have such great respect, Congressman Neil Smith, a great leader of this nation. Congressman Dave Nagel, who has joined us in Washington and is off to an outstanding start. And ladies and gentlemen, someone who went to the United States Senate when I did and when Paul Simon did, Senator Tom Harkin is one of the best I've ever seen anywhere. He is a fighter and he gets the job done. He really does. He is in there. I'm not going to single out others, but I would like to introduce the one person who is most special to me in the entire world, my best friend, the love of my wife, Tipper Gore. Stand up. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your attendance here and your patience through a long but very enjoyable evening. And as a result, I'm going to get right to the point, and I'm going to try my best to match Mike Dukakis's record of staying within the 10 minutes. I'll try not to go too far over. This is a time for candor among Democrats. In times of national crisis, we can afford no less than candor. The stock market collapsed once and has the potential for doing so again. Our economy is under challenge all around the world. America's future now lies in the shadows of intolerable deficits and mounting debt. And we are a country, a great country, now bereft of leadership. Ronald Reagan and George Bush have squandered their administration's mandate, just as their administration is squandering our nation's future. At a critical moment, when not only America but the entire world needs a leader, the institution of the American presidency is missing altogether. Where is the president? Where is his leadership? Why doesn't he speak and lead this nation? Can you imagine for one moment what would have happened if Franklin Roosevelt had been in the White House when the stock market crashed? Would we have heard from him? Would we have had leadership? Would we have been offered a vision of this nation's future? A plan for changing the circumstances which led to that crash? Of course we would have. Any Democrat who was in the White House would have at least spoken to the nation and offered a vision of our future. But instead, Ronald Reagan was missing. And now George Bush has the audacity to ask this nation to continue for another 4 years the Reagan-Bush blueprint. Are we going to let him do that? Can we win a Democratic victory in 1988? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we must win because it is a time of crisis. And the state of Iowa is in crisis also. You have here the highest high school graduation rate in the country, yet too many. It is something to be proud of, and yet too many of your brightest graduates are being forced to leave the farms their families have run for generations, and too many of them are choosing to leave the state. You have an uncaring Republican administration here in Iowa that has ignored your problems for too long. Nothing could be better for Iowa, and nothing could be better for the nation than to elect a Democratic president who can reinstill confidence in our future, close the deal on an historic arms agreement, and lead our nation in living up to its full and great potential. The stakes are higher now. The stakes are higher now than they have been for a long, long time. And as a result, I've made a determination to campaign for the presidency the only way I know how, by telling you what I believe is right for this country. And I will not say things which some people think Iowans want to hear, but which I think are bad for the country. That is why, for example, I cannot in good conscience support comprehensive mandatory production controls that would raise, in my judgment, raise food prices for all Americans and tell foreigners our farmers can't compete. That's why I will never accept a protectionist trade amendment that destroys confidence in our economy and gradually weakens the very industries it pretends to assist. Our party has stood against protectionism. We cannot go down that road. We need a strong president who is determined to reduce unfair trade barriers by demanding action, not promises, and training our workers, not dragging our nation and others into a crippling trade war at a perilous and tenuous moment for the world's economy. That is why also I will not go along with a missile flight test ban that would jeopardize our national security by handicapping our nuclear deterrent. Nuclear deterrence is not particularly popular, but until we have something to substitute for it, we must stand by it, because the survival of the human race now depends upon deterrence. We must stand by it. And we will not make our children safer by leaving the world to wonder whether our deterrent forces will or will not work. Nor will I promise a budget-busting jobs program designed for a depression. I'd rather prepare American workers for the 1990s, not treat them like we must return to the 1930s. I like to think that people in this state would agree. Some candidates at times seem to think you care more about your own interests than about the national interests. I disagree. I know you recognize that at a time when this country needs us more than ever, our first interest as a party is to speak up for America's interests as a nation. For the last 7 years, President Reagan and Vice President George Bush have told Americans to forget about others and look out for themselves. I know we're better than they think we are. I will not lead our party down the path of least resistance. Some say the Iowa caucuses reward ideological purity rather than intellectual honesty. They tell me you won't be interested when I speak out for the strong national defense I believe strongly we need to achieve the dramatic arms control that we all want and that may very well be in prospect for the next President of the United States. They warn that if I dare to defend what I believe strongly is our needed presence in the Persian Gulf or oppose a misguided flight test ban, then you will stop listening to everything else I have to say. They think you won't keep watching long enough to see that no one on this stage has a stronger voting record on civil rights than I do, that no one here has done more to help children get adequate nutrition and the elderly get good health care. And that over the past decade, no person in this race or in our party has been tougher on those who would pollute our backyards and poison our groundwater with toxic waste. Well, I must say that if it takes a passing grade on every single litmus test, every single test for StarPac, for example, a candidate like John Kennedy or Harry Truman or Franklin Roosevelt could never win the Iowa caucuses. I'm not about to turn my back on the principles and traditions of our party. The principles that our party has stood for through every successful Democratic campaign and in every Democratic presidency. I've learned a lot in the last 6 months here. I've learned that this is a great state with people who are genuinely and deeply dedicated and committed to the process of these caucuses, and I am deeply impressed, and I am grateful to those of you who participate so fully in this process. But I've also learned that there are some hard truths that we Democrats once knew and must still face up to. That we cannot spend money we don't have or make promises we cannot afford to keep. That a strong national defense and a reliable deterrent are essential to achieving meaningful arms control. That as the greatest democracy, the strongest economy, and the most powerful nation on earth, we cannot shrink from our historic responsibilities to defend freedom and stand by our allies. That no matter how complex our trade problems, the only lasting answer to making America competitive is to be found within ourselves. And finally, that our party is sinking toward minority status in a nation where young people who were not born Democrats see no reason to become Democrats unless we start giving them those reasons. And we must do that. I'm going to talk about those truths here in Iowa and elsewhere. I'm going to carry on the debate our party needs and our nation cries out for. We cannot go on with business as usual. We cannot keep playing politics as usual. I will not do what the pundits say that it takes to win Iowa, flatter you with promises, change my tune, and back down from my convictions. I will not play that game or abide by those rules. When you run for president, you cannot just speak to the room you're in. You must speak to the entire country. Americans will never believe a candidate who says one week what he thinks Iowa wants to hear, the next week what he thinks New Hampshire wants to hear, and the week after that what he thinks the South wants to hear. A candidate who doesn't have the courage to speak up for a strong defense in Iowa will not have the credibility to talk that way in Manchester or Rapid City. The next president must be someone who doesn't need to ask where he is to know what he wants to say. I remember what President John Kennedy said at his inauguration. Now I understand a little more about what he learned and did to get there. Don't ask which candidate can do the most for you. Ask which candidate can do the most for our country. The test of a candidate for President of the United States is not how many times you've met us, which of us got here first, came here most, spent the most money, or bought the most tickets to this dinner. The test of a candidate for president, is what he will do for this nation. Not for one state, but for the nation as a whole. And we must speak to the nation as a whole. A presidential campaign is not about tactics. It's about ideas. It's not about stifling party debates. It's about where our party stands. It's not about choosing the most dogged suitor. It's about choosing the person most qualified for the job. The choice is not between liberal and conservative. Our party needs a leader, not a contest to see who can sound the most doctrinaire. When our neighbors are hurting and when our nation is in trouble, it is time for us to set aside old and narrow answers that do not work and reach out for better answers that do. I will not barter my beliefs to win votes here or elsewhere, and neither would you if you were in my place. If that is what it takes to win the Iowa caucuses, then I will not do it. I may not finish first in the Iowa caucuses in February, but I intend to see that my party finishes first in Iowa next November. I I said at the outset of my remarks that this is a time for candor. I believe there is, in fact, something wrong with a nominating process that gives one state the loudest voice and then produces candidates who cannot carry that state. Iowa is a competitive state. All of you know it. The polls show it. The experts know it. And yet we have not been able to carry Iowa for our presidential nominee in the general election for the last 23 years. We've lost 4 out of the last 5 elections. Last time we lost 49 out of 50 states. The time before that, 47 out of 50 states. Isn't it time for a change, to ask how we can better serve the American people? This state is important. My goal is to carry it for our party in November of 1988 for the first time since 1964. And I want your help to do that. I ask for your consideration and support. I respect your state and your dedication to our Democratic Party. I hope to win here in the fall, and ladies and gentlemen, I feel very deeply that the time is now to rekindle the spirit of America, to regenerate a sense of national purpose, to set clear goals for our nation, and to create a shared vision of America's future, of peace and prosperity, a vision that is clear enough and compelling enough to inspire all Americans to join with us in winning the election and building for this nation a future with hope. Let's get on with that task. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. I have just a few announcements and some very brief concluding comments. First, there are still events going on. The Iowa Democratic Party Affirmative Action Committee and Senator Tom Harkin are hosting a dance in the Gaskell Room on the second floor of this facility. Also, Dave and Diane Nagel invite you to a coffee and chocolates after-dinner reception in room A on the second floor here. And tomorrow morning, don't forget to attend the Truman Fund breakfast at 8:00 a.m. at the Savory in the Grand Ballroom, which is a breakfast to raise funds to support our legislative candidates. Thank each and every one of you for being here this evening.
You've been watching the Iowa State Democratic Party's annual Jefferson-Jackson Day Dinner. We'd like to remind our viewers that we'll be opening our phone lines in just a few minutes for our Process and Policy Viewer call-in program.
Hi,